Look up at the tallest building in your city. Impressive, right? Now imagine this. 4,500 years ago, when most humans lived in mud huts and struggled to survive, day by day ancient. Egyptians built structures so massive, so perfect, so impossible that they remained the tallest buildings on Earth for over 3,800 years. The Great Pyramid of Giza weighs 6 million tons. It contains 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing as much as a modern car. And here is the part that will blow your mind. It was built with such mathematical precision that modern engineers, armed with laser technology and computer modeling, still can't figure out exactly how they did it. These weren't just tombs for dead kings. They were statements of power that could literally be seen from space before space travel existed. They were messages to the gods, challenges to death itself, and monuments to human ambition that refused to accept any limits whatsoever. But the real mystery isn't just how they were built with primitive tools and human muscle power. It's why an entire civilization willingly dedicated everything they had, their wealth, their lives, their very souls, to building these massive stone mountains for pharaohs who would never live to see them completed. Today, over 100 million people visit pyramids every year, making them the most popular tourist destination in the Middle East. But most visitors have no idea they're standing before humanity's first skyscrapers, the world's oldest tourist attractions, and the last remaining wonder of the ancient world. The pyramids have survived devastating wars, massive earthquakes, catastrophic floods, and over 4,000 years of treasure hunters, grave robbers, and conquerors trying to crack them open and steal their secrets. Yet they still guard their deepest mysteries, standing like silent guardians over the desert sands. This is the story of how humans first learned to dream impossibly big, build things that defied every law of physics and engineering they understood, and leave messages for eternity that would outlast their entire civilization. This is the story of humanity's greatest mystery. The pyramids that changed our understanding of what human beings can accomplish when they refuse to accept the word impossible. A story begins in ancient Egypt around 3100 BCE, when the world was a dramatically different place than anything we can imagine today. Most humans lived as subsistence farmers, hunters, and nomads, never traveling more than a few miles from where they were born. Cities were rare and small, writing had just been invented and was known to only a tiny elite, and the wheel was still a revolutionary new technology that most people had never seen. Life was harsh, brutal, and short, with most people dying before age 30 from disease, starvation, or violence. But along the life-giving waters of the Nile River, something extraordinary was happening that would change the course of human history. The Egyptian civilization was rapidly growing into the most advanced, sophisticated, and powerful society the world had ever seen. They had developed complex systems of government that could coordinate the activities of millions of people, mathematical concepts that allowed them to calculate areas and volumes with stunning precision, medical knowledge that included surgical procedures and pharmaceutical treatments, and engineering techniques that seemed almost magical to their neighbors. The Egyptians had learned to predict the Nile's annual flooding with remarkable accuracy, which brought fertile black silt that transformed the desert into the most productive agricultural region in the ancient world. This predictable abundance meant they could grow far more food than they needed for basic survival, creating the world's first true surplus economy. For the first time in human history, not everyone had to spend their entire lives producing food just to stay alive. This surplus food meant some people could become full-time specialists. Artists who created beautiful sculptures and paintings, engineers who designed complex irrigation systems, priests who maintained elaborate religious ceremonies, scribes who kept detailed records, and administrators who managed the increasingly complex society. Egypt became a civilization where human creativity and ambition could flourish beyond mere survival, setting the stage for achievements that would amaze the world. But the Egyptians had developed an obsession that would consume their entire culture and drive them to build the most incredible monuments in human history: the problem of death. Unlike other ancient peoples who accepted death as the final end of existence, Egyptians believed in an afterlife so real, so important, and so detailed that preparing for it became the central focus of their entire lives. They believed that if a person's body was preserved properly through mummification, and surrounded by the right magical objects, spells, and provisions, that person could live forever in a paradise called the Field of Reeds. This wasn't just a vague hope or religious comfort. It was a detailed, systematic belief system that affected every aspect of Egyptian society. They believed the afterlife was a physical place where people would need food, clothing, furniture, servants, and entertainment. Death wasn't an ending but a transformation, a journey to a better world where the righteous would live in eternal happiness under the protection of the gods. This belief created an obsession with immortality and preservation that would drive Egyptian civilization for over 3,000 years, making them the longest-lasting civilization in human history. But here's the crucial part that explains why they built pyramids. Egyptian kings, called pharaohs, weren't just political rulers, they were believed to be living gods on earth, direct descendants of the sun god Ra. When they died, they would return to the heavens and continue ruling Egypt from the afterlife, protecting their people and ensuring the Nile's continued flooding. This meant pharaohs needed the most elaborate preparations for death because they had the most important jobs in the afterlife. But it also meant they needed to prove their divine power while they were still alive. They needed monuments so impressive, so impossible, that their people would truly believe they were gods walking among humans. They needed buildings that would make every person who saw them fall to their knees in awe and worship. The first pyramid builder was Pharaoh Djoser, who ruled around 2670 BCE during what historians call the Old Kingdom, Egypt's golden age of pyramid construction. Before Djoser, even the mightiest pharaohs were buried in simple rectangular underground chambers covered by low, flat-topped structures called mastabas. These mastabas were impressive by the standards of their time, but they were essentially elaborate versions of the mud brick tombs used by ordinary Egyptians. But Djoser had the great fortune to employ a brilliant architect named Imhotep, who would become history's first known engineer, doctor, and master builder. Imhotep was a genius who understood mathematics, medicine, astronomy, and architecture. More importantly, he was a visionary who could imagine things that had never existed before. Imhotep looked at the traditional mastaba design and had a radical, revolutionary idea. What if they stacked 6 mastabas on top of each other, each one smaller than the one below, creating a giant stone stairway reaching toward the heavens? The result was the step pyramid at Saqqara, which still stands today as humanity's first monumental stone building. At 200 feet tall, it dominated the landscape like nothing humans had ever constructed. When people saw it rising from the desert like a man-made mountain, they truly believed their pharaoh must be a god. The step pyramid was humanity's first skyscraper, and it changed forever how humans thought about what was possible to build. But the step pyramid was just the beginning of an architectural revolution that would push human engineering to seemingly impossible heights. Future pharaohs looked at Djoser's monument and thought, if he can build something that incredible, I can build something even more impressive. This started what historians call the Pyramid Age, a period of competitive monument building that lasted for over 500 years and produced some of the most amazing structures ever created. Pharaoh Sneferu, who ruled around 2600 BCE and was known for his ambitious building projects, built not one but 3 full-sized pyramids during his 24-year reign, each one a bold experiment in pyramid design and engineering. His first pyramid, known today as the Bent Pyramid, started at a steep 54-degree angle, but had to be changed to a gentler, 43-degree angle halfway up, because the structure was becoming dangerously unstable under its own enormous weight. Instead of abandoning the project or accepting a flawed monument, Sneferu's brilliant engineers learned from this near disaster and applied their new knowledge to build the Red Pyramid, the first completely successful smooth-sided pyramid. The Red Pyramid proved that humans could build perfect geometric monuments on a massive scale, setting the stage for even more ambitious projects. But Sneferu's son, Khufu, had the biggest ambitions of all. Around 2580 BCE, he decided to build a pyramid so massive, so perfect, so incredible that it would prove forever that he was the greatest pharaoh who ever lived and the most powerful god on earth. He chose a site at Giza, on a limestone plateau near modern-day Cairo, and began construction of what would become the Great Pyramid, one of the most incredible achievements in all of human history. The numbers alone are absolutely staggering and almost impossible to comprehend. The Great Pyramid originally stood 481 feet tall, making it the tallest man-made structure in the world for over 3,800 years until the Eiffel Tower was built in Paris in 1889. Its massive base covers 13 acres. You could fit 10 American football fields inside its footprint. It contains approximately 2.3 million individual stone blocks, with the average block weighing 2.5 tons and the largest blocks weighing up to 15 tons each. If you broke up the Great Pyramid and used all its stone to build a wall 6 feet high and 1 foot thick, that wall could stretch from New York City all the way to Los Angeles. But the engineering precision is what truly boggles the mind and challenges our assumptions about ancient technology. The base of the Great Pyramid is level 2 within just 2.1 centimeters less than an inch of variation across a structure that covers 13 acres. To put this in perspective, modern construction workers using laser levels and GPS technology struggle to achieve this level of precision on much smaller buildings. The 4 sides are aligned almost perfectly with true north, south, east, and west, with an accuracy of just 3/60th of a degree of precision that suggests the builders had sophisticated knowledge of astronomy and navigation. Here is where the mystery deepens into one of history's greatest puzzles. We still don't know exactly how they built it with the technology available in 2580 BCE. The limestone blocks were cut from quarries, using copper tools. Remember, this was over 1,000 years before iron tools were invented. The cuts are so precise that you can't fit a knife blade between the joints of many blocks. Many stones came from quarries hundreds of miles away and had to be transported to Giza, probably on specially built boats during the Nile's annual flood season, then somehow moved from the river to the construction site and lifted into position. The most popular theory is that workers built enormous ramps around the pyramid, gradually raising the height as the pyramid grew taller, and used ropes, levers, and raw human power to drag the massive blocks up these ramps and into their precise positions. But no one has found archaeological evidence of ramps large enough to reach the pyramid's higher levels, and the ramps would have required more material than the pyramid itself. Some engineers think the Egyptians used internal ramps built inside the pyramid itself, allowing workers to move blocks up through the interior as construction progressed. Others believe they used a complex system of pulleys, counterweights, and mechanical advantages that we haven't discovered yet. A few researchers have proposed that the Egyptians had access to advanced technology that has been lost to history, though there's no evidence to support such claims. What we do know from recent archaeological discoveries is that building the Great Pyramid required an enormous, highly organized workforce that was far more sophisticated than most people imagine. Traditional estimates suggested 100,000 slaves labored in misery for 20 years, whipped and driven by cruel overseers, but modern archaeology has revealed a completely different and much more interesting story. The workers weren't slaves at all. They were skilled craftsmen, seasonal laborers, and farmers who worked on the pyramid during the Nile's flood season when farming was impossible and they needed alternative employment. Recent excavations have uncovered the workers' villages near the pyramids, complete with well-organized bakeries that could produce thousands of loaves, daily breweries that supplied workers with beer, which was safer to drink than water, medical facilities with evidence of sophisticated surgical procedures, and cemeteries where workers were buried with respect and honor near the pyramids they helped build. These workers were remarkably well fed for ancient standards, receiving daily rations of bread, beer, meat, and vegetables that provided more calories and protein than most people in the ancient world ever consumed. When they died, often from the dangerous work of moving massive stones, they were buried with dignity and their graves were marked with inscriptions honoring their contributions. Graffiti left by work crews shows they took tremendous pride in their jobs, with teams competing against each other and giving themselves names like Friends of Khufu, Drunkards of Menkaure, and Vigorous Gang. The Great Pyramid wasn't just a single monument, but the centerpiece of a vast complex that included 2 smaller pyramids for Khufu's queens, several tiny pyramids for other royal family members, a mortuary temple where priests performed daily rituals for the dead pharaoh's spirit, a long causeway connecting the pyramid to the Nile River, and the Great Sphinx, the massive lion-bodied statue that may have been carved to resemble Khufu himself. The entire complex was designed as an elaborate machine for immortality, a place where Khufu's spirit could live forever and continue ruling Egypt from the afterlife. After Khufu's death, his son Khafre built his own pyramid at Giza, almost as large as his father rests but positioned on slightly higher ground to make it appear even taller from certain viewing angles, an ancient example of competitive architecture. Khafre's grandson, Menkaure, completed the famous trio with a smaller but still impressive pyramid that used some of the largest stone blocks ever quarried in ancient Egypt. Together, these 3 pyramids at Giza created the most famous and recognizable skyline in the ancient world, a monument to human ambition that has inspired visitors for over 4,000 years. But pyramid building came with an enormous economic cost that eventually brought the Pyramid Age to an end. Some modern economists estimate that the Great Pyramid consumed the equivalent of Egypt's entire gross domestic product for several years, essentially bankrupting the kingdom to build one pharaoh's tomb. The pharaohs were literally spending their civilization's entire accumulated wealth on their own monuments to immortality. And eventually, this became economically unsustainable even for the richest kingdom in the ancient world. Later pharaohs built smaller, less expensive pyramids using inferior construction techniques, and the quality of pyramid construction gradually declined over several centuries. The last significant pyramid was built around 1750 BCE, but by then, Egyptian engineering expertise had moved on to different challenges and different types of monuments. Instead of highly visible pyramids that advertised their contents to potential robbers, later pharaohs chose to carve elaborate tombs into the cliffs of the Valley of the Kings, where they hoped hidden burial chambers would protect their mummies and treasures from the grave. Robbers who had already broken into most of the earlier pyramids. Because that was the pyramid's fatal flaw. The weakness that doomed them from the beginning, they were completely impossible to hide. These massive monuments essentially functioned as giant advertisements proclaiming, "Fabulous treasure buried here." Almost all pyramids were broken into and thoroughly robbed, many within just a few centuries of being built. The pharaohs who spent enormous fortunes trying to achieve immortality and eternal fame often had their carefully preserved mummies destroyed and their precious grave goods stolen by the very people they had ruled, their names forgotten and their monuments left empty. For over 2,000 years after the last pyramid was built, these monuments stood in the desert, slowly being buried by shifting sands and gradually forgotten by a world that had moved on to other concerns and other civilizations. The ancient Greeks and Romans visited them as tourists and marveled at their size and precision, just as people do today. The Greek historian Herodotus, writing around 450 BCE, called them one of the 7 wonders of the world and interviewed elderly Egyptian priests about how they were built, though much of what they told him was probably legend rather than historical fact. But gradually, as the Greek and Roman empires fell and Egypt was conquered by Arabs, then Turks, then various other powers, accurate knowledge of how the pyramids were built and who built them was completely lost to history. During the Middle Ages, some people believed the pyramids were Joseph's granaries, mentioned in the Bible as the place where grain was stored during the 7 years of plenty to prepare for the 7 years of famine. Others thought they were built by giants, demons, or supernatural beings, since it seemed impossible that ordinary humans could have created such massive structures. Arab rulers occasionally attempted to demolish the pyramids to use their stone for building mosques, palaces, and other construction projects in nearby Cairo, but they quickly discovered that the pyramids were far too massive and too well built to be easily destroyed. The 12th century ruler Al-Aziz Uthman tried to demolish the smaller pyramid at Giza, but gave up after months of expensive effort had removed only a few stones from one side. The modern scientific rediscovery of the pyramids began with Napoleon Bonaparte's invasion of Egypt in 1798. Napoleon brought with him not just soldiers and artillery, but also a team of 167 scholars, scientists, artists, and engineers who studied and measured the pyramids scientifically for the first time in over 1,000 years. When Napoleon's expedition returned to France, they published a massive, multi-volume work called Description de l'Egypte, with detailed descriptions, accurate measurements, and beautiful illustrations that sparked European fascination with ancient Egypt and began the modern field of Egyptology. This began the Great Age of Egyptian archaeology, as European and later American archaeologists flocked to Egypt to study pyramids, temples, tombs, and other ancient monuments. In 1822, French scholar Jean-François Champollion made one of history's greatest intellectual breakthroughs when he deciphered hieroglyphic writing using the famous Rosetta Stone, finally allowing scholars to read ancient Egyptian texts and understand the true purpose and meaning of the pyramids. Throughout the 19th and 20th centuries, archaeologists made incredible discoveries inside and around the pyramids that revolutionized our understanding of ancient Egyptian civilization. They found burial chambers with elaborate decorations, massive stone sarcophagi that once held royal mummies, hieroglyphic inscriptions that revealed the names and histories of pyramid builders, and the extensive workers' villages that showed how these monuments were actually constructed. But the pyramids also became magnets for mystery theories and conspiracy claims that persist to this day. Some people claimed they contained secret chambers hiding advanced technology or evidence of contact with extraterrestrial beings. Others believed they were built using lost ancient knowledge that modern humans couldn't understand or replicate. These theories flourish partly because the pyramid's incredible precision and massive scale can seem almost supernatural, and partly because significant mysteries about their construction do remain unsolved. Modern technology has revolutionized pyramid research by allowing archaeologists to explore these monuments without damaging them. Ground-penetrating radar can detect hidden chambers and passages. Cosmic ray detectors can identify voids inside solid stone. Robotic cameras can explore narrow shafts and passages that are too small or dangerous for human researchers. In 2017, an international team of scientists announced the discovery of a large void inside the Great Pyramid, possibly a hidden chamber that hasn't been entered for thousands of years and might still contain artifacts or inscriptions. Today, the pyramids are Egypt's most popular and economically important tourist attraction, drawing millions of visitors annually and generating billions of dollars in revenue that helps support the modern Egyptian economy. They read the last surviving wonder of the ancient world and UNESCO World Heritage Sites that are legally protected by international law. But they also face serious modern threats that didn't exist when they were built. Air pollution from nearby Cairo, that's gradually dissolving the limestone groundwater changes that affect the monument's foundations and the physical wear and tear caused by millions of tourists climbing on structures that were undesigned for such heavy use. The Egyptian government now carefully controls access to protect these irreplaceable monuments while still allowing visitors to experience them. Only limited numbers of tourists can enter the pyramid interiors each day, and strict rules prohibit touching the walls or taking flash photographs that might damage ancient decorations. Ongoing conservation efforts work constantly to prevent further deterioration while maintaining public access to these incredible historical sites. Recent archaeological discoveries continue to reveal new information about pyramid builders and the society that created these monuments. In 2013, archaeologists found ancient papyrus scrolls at the Red Sea port of Wadi al-Jarf that describe the daily work of pyramid construction crews, including detailed records of how they transported limestone blocks down the Nile River to the Giza construction site. DNA analysis of mummy remains has revealed information about the health, diet, family relationships, and geographic origins of ancient Egyptians. Advanced computer modeling and virtual reality now allow researchers to test different theories about pyramid construction methods and explore what these complexes looked like when they were new, complete with white limestone casing stones that made the pyramids shine like mirrors in the desert sun and could be seen from dozens of miles away. But perhaps the most important thing recent research has revealed is how the pyramids have changed our understanding of ancient civilizations and human capabilities. For too long, historians and archaeologists underestimated the intelligence, creativity, and technical abilities of ancient peoples, assuming that impressive monuments must have been built by aliens or using lost super technology rather than human skill and determination. The pyramids prove conclusively that humans 4,500 years ago were just as smart, creative, innovative, and ambitious as people today. They simply had different tools, different challenges, and different priorities. They show us that human intelligence and ingenuity are not recent developments but fundamental characteristics of our species that have driven progress and achievement throughout history. The pyramids also reveal something profound and timeless about human nature, our deep desire to create something lasting, something that will outlive our individual lives and prove to future generations that we existed and that our lives had meaning. Every culture throughout history has built monuments, but none have matched the pyramid's incredible combination of massive size, mathematical precision, and lasting durability. Modern skyscrapers are much taller than pyramids, but they're built to last maybe 50 to 100 years before being demolished or extensively renovated. The pyramids have stood essentially unchanged for 4,500 years and will probably continue standing for thousands more years. In our age of planned obsolescence, constant technological change, and disposable consumer goods, there's something deeply inspiring about structures that were built to last literally forever. The pyramids also demonstrate what human beings can accomplish when they work together toward a common goal with shared purpose and vision. Building the Great Pyramid required unprecedented coordination between architects who designed the structure, engineers who solved construction problems, quarry workers who cut millions of stone blocks, boat crews who transported materials along the Nile, construction teams who assembled the monument, cooks who fed thousands of workers, daily doctors who treated injuries, and administrators who managed this enormous enterprise for decades. It required mathematical precision that allowed builders to maintain perfect geometry over massive scales, engineering innovation that solved problems no one had ever faced before, and logistical planning that coordinated the activities of tens of thousands of people over 20 years or more. The level of organization, communication, and cooperation required to build the pyramids wouldn't be matched again until the modern industrial age, over 4,000 years later. Yet the pyramids also represent some troubling aspects of human nature and social organization. They were built by absolute rulers who commanded the labor, resources, and very lives of their subjects for their own glorification. The enormous wealth and human effort that went into building pyramids could have been used to improve living conditions for ordinary Egyptians, develop new technologies, explore new territories, or create lasting benefits for society as a whole. Instead, it was devoted almost entirely to ensuring the comfortable afterlife of a tiny elite who claimed divine authority. This raises profound questions that remain relevant today about inequality, leadership, and social responsibility. How much inequality can a society tolerate before it becomes unstable or unjust? When does the pursuit of individual glory or achievement become harmful to collective well-being? How should we balance respect for authority and tradition with the need for progress and social justice? The pyramids continue to inspire modern architects, engineers, and designers around the world. Contemporary buildings use pyramid shapes for both practical and symbolic reasons. From the glass pyramid entrance to the Louvre Museum in Paris to the Luxor Hotel and Casino in Las Vegas to numerous office buildings, monuments, and artistic installations. These modern pyramids pay tribute to the original monuments while serving very different purposes in very different societies. Space agencies and futurists study the pyramids as potential models for construction projects on other planets. NASA researchers have proposed using pyramid shapes for lunar bases because the form is inherently stable, efficient to construct, and well-suited to the challenges of building in airless environments with extreme temperature variations. If humans ever establish permanent colonies on Mars or other worlds, they might live in pyramid cities that draw direct inspiration from these ancient Egyptian monuments. The pyramids also continue to influence popular culture, appearing in countless movies, television shows, books, video games, and other forms of entertainment. They represent mystery, ancient wisdom, lost civilizations, and the enduring power of human achievement. Children around the world learn about pyramids in school, making them among the most recognizable and universally known structures ever built. But beyond their cultural impact and symbolic importance, the pyramids serve as irreplaceable time capsules that connect us directly across millennia to our ancient ancestors. When you stand beside the Great Pyramid today, you're looking at something that was already over 500 years old when Jesus was born. That was ancient history when Julius Caesar visited Egypt that impressed medieval travelers as much as it impresses modern tourists. The massive stones you can touch were cut, shaped, and positioned by people who lived 150 generations ago. These people had the same fundamental hopes, fears, dreams, and ambitions as modern humans. They wanted to be remembered, to create something meaningful that would outlast their individual lives, to leave their mark on the world and prove that their existence had mattered. In that most basic human desire, they succeeded far beyond anything they could have imagined. The pyramids teach us that human ambition, creativity, and determination are timeless qualities that transcend any particular historical period or technological level. Every generation of humans faces challenges that seem impossible to overcome with available resources and knowledge. The ancient Egyptians faced the challenge of building permanent monuments that would preserve their civilization as achievements forever using nothing but primitive tools, human muscle power, and mathematical knowledge. They succeeded by thinking boldly, planning meticulously, working cooperatively, and refusing to accept that anything was impossible. Today, we face different but equally daunting challenges that will require the same qualities of ambition, creativity, and determination, addressing climate change, eliminating poverty and disease, exploring space, and ensuring that human civilization continues to progress and flourish. The pyramids remind us that human beings have always found ways to achieve what seemed impossible when they combined vision with hard work, individual genius with collective effort, and refused to be limited by conventional thinking about what was possible. So the next time you see a photograph of the pyramids, watch a documentary about ancient Egypt, or have the incredible opportunity to visit these monuments in person. Remember that you're not just looking at ancient tourist attractions or impressive piles of stone. You're seeing concrete proof that humans have always dreamed of greatness, that we've always pushed beyond what seemed possible with available technology and resources, and that the desire to build something lasting and meaningful is one of our most fundamental and inspiring characteristics as a species. The pyramids stand forever as monuments to human ambition, ingenuity, and the eternal refusal to accept limits on what we can achieve. They remind us that we're part of a species that looks at impossible challenges and responds, "Let's figure out how to do it anyway." In an uncertain world full of complex problems, that's a message of hope and inspiration that's worth remembering, celebrating, and passing on to future generations who will face their own impossible challenges and find their own ways to build monuments that will amaze the world.